My name is Huang, and I am 23 years old. The house I live in is only about 20 square meters. I call it a house to make myself feel a little less miserable, but in reality, it is nothing more than an old room hidden deep inside a narrow alley where even two motorbikes can barely pass each other. The roof is made of rusty sheets of metal. Some holes are so large that during the day I can see sunlight shining through them. On rainy nights, water drips from the roof, one drop after another, falling directly onto the old bed pushed against the wall. I live here alone. My parents are not by my side. I have no brothers or sisters. I do not even have a close friend nearby whom I can call whenever life becomes too difficult. Every morning, I usually wake up at 5:30. It is not because I am more hardworking than other people. It is because the metal roof heats up very quickly. As soon as the sun rises, the room becomes hot and suffocating. My old electric fan turns very slowly. Whenever it is running, it makes a rattling sound as though it could fall apart at any moment. Many times I have wanted to buy a new one, but whenever I look at the money left in my wallet, I tell myself, it's alright, this one still works. There is nothing valuable inside this house. There is an old metal bed that the previous tenant left behind, a small plastic table with two broken legs, which I support with several bricks, a rice cooker that I bought second-hand for 80,000 Vietnamese dong, a few sets of clothes hanging from a rope stretched across the wall, and a small mirror with a crack in one corner. Every morning, I stand in front of that mirror and comb my hair. When I look at my reflection, I sometimes feel that I look much older than 23. There are always dark circles beneath my eyes because I do not sleep enough. My skin has become darker because I spend so much time outside. My hands are rough and calloused from working every day. I work as a helper at a small, inexpensive restaurant almost 3 kilometers from my home. My working day begins at 7 in the morning and usually ends at 8 in the evening. I wash dishes, prepare vegetables, wipe tables, serve food, and clean the restaurant after all the customers have gone home. I earn 5.5 million Vietnamese dong each month. It may not sound like a very small amount, but the rent for this room alone is 1,200,000 dong. Electricity, water, petrol, and other expenses take away almost everything that remains. I always try to save a few 100,000 dong each month in case I become sick. But the life of a poor person is strange. The harder you try to save, the more unexpected problems seem to appear. Sometimes my old motorbike breaks down. Sometimes I get a fever and have to buy medicine. Sometimes the landlord suddenly announces that the electricity price has increased. In some months, after paying for everything, I have less than 300,000 dong left to survive until my next payday. During those times, my meals are very simple. In the morning, I usually drink a glass of water and leave for work. The restaurant provides lunch for its employees, so I try to eat a little more at midday. When I return home in the evening, I fry the leftover rice with an egg. When I have no eggs, I eat the rice with fish sauce. On days when I am too exhausted, I drink some water and go straight to bed. I am not as afraid of hunger as I am of loneliness. At night, after I close the rotten wooden door, the entire room falls silent. Outside, I can still hear the neighboring families talking. I hear children crying, mothers calling their children inside for dinner, and fathers asking their children whether they had a good day at school. I lie on my bed, staring at the dark metal roof above me, wondering how long it has been since someone last asked me, "Are you tired today?" My father died when I was 14 years old. He was killed in an accident while working at a construction site. They brought him home in an ambulance. At that time, I was still sitting in my classroom. By the time I ran home, the yard was already crowded with people. All I could see were my father's feet beneath a white sheet. After he died, my mother worked alone and did everything she could to support me. She sold vegetables at the market and accepted any job people offered her. Even on cold, rainy mornings, she had to sit outside from 4 o'clock. I used to believe that I only needed to grow up quickly, find a job, and earn money. Then life would become easier for both of us. But when I was 20 years old, my mother left me too. She had been ill for a long time, but she refused to see a doctor because she was afraid of the cost. By the time she collapsed in the middle of the market, her illness had already become too serious. During her final days in the hospital, she held my hand and said, "I'm sorry I have nothing to leave you." I cried and told her that I did not need anything. I only needed her to live. But she could not stay. After her funeral, I sold our small house in the countryside to repay the money my mother had borrowed for her treatment. There was very little left afterward. I packed a few old clothes into a bag, moved to the city to find work, and rented this room. I cried. On the first day, I stepped inside. The walls were covered with stains and mold. The floor was cracked in several places. The corner used as a kitchen was blackened by smoke. The door could not be locked properly, so every night I had to secure it with an extra piece of wire. But it was the cheapest room I could find. I told myself I would only stay for a few months. Once I had saved enough money, I would move somewhere better. Nearly 3 years have passed. I am still here. There was one night of heavy rain that I will never forget. That evening, I returned from work very late. As soon as I opened the door, I saw that the water inside had already risen above my ankles. The wind had torn away part of the roof. Rainwater poured directly onto my bed. My clothes, blankets, and the old notebooks my mother had left behind were completely soaked. I quickly placed a plastic basin beneath the leak, but there was too much water. I used towels to wipe the floor, pushed the water outside with a broom, and then ran back inside to drag the bed into another corner. I worked alone until almost 2 in the morning. When the rain finally became lighter, I sat down on the wet floor. My entire body was shaking from the cold. As I looked around at the mess, I suddenly felt as though I could not endure it any longer. I cried for a very long time. I called the number of an old friend, but when I heard the phone ringing, I ended the call. I was afraid of disturbing someone else. I was afraid they would discover how terrible my life had become. I was also afraid they would offer me a few comforting words and then return to their own lives while I remain alone in this flooded room. That night, I looked at my mother's photograph, blurred and damaged by the water, and said, "Mom, I'm so tired. I don't know how much longer I can keep going." No one answered me. There was only the steady sound of rainwater dripping from the roof. The next morning, I still went to work. I hung my wet clothes on the rope, covered the damaged part of the roof with a sheet of plastic, and changed into my uniform. My eyes were swollen and red, but when I arrived at the restaurant, I still had to smile at the customers. No one knew how much I had cried the night before. No one knew that the shoes I was wearing were still wet. No one knew that I had counted every last coin just to buy a loaf of bread for breakfast. Sometimes I see young women my age walking past the restaurant. They wear beautiful dresses and talk about holidays, newly opened cafes, or the gifts their boyfriends have bought for them. I am not jealous of them. I only wonder what a normal life feels like. Does it mean that when you are ill, someone takes you to the doctor? Does it mean that when you return home, a light is already on and someone is waiting for you? Does it mean that when it rains, you do not have to place basins all around the house to catch the water? I used to be deeply ashamed of my home. Whenever my colleagues asked where I lived, I only mentioned the neighborhood and quickly changed the subject. I have never invited anyone here. I am afraid they will see the old bed. I am afraid they will smell the dampness. I am afraid they will discover that I have lived like this for years. But slowly I began to understand that poverty is not something to be ashamed of. I do not steal from anyone. I do not deceive anyone. I work with my own two hands to survive. This house may be falling apart, but it has sheltered me through many nights. It is the place where I can return, close the door, and allow myself to be weak. One afternoon, on my way home from work, I found a small potted plant that someone had thrown beside a pile of rubbish. The plant was almost dead. Its leaves were yellow, and the soil inside the pot was completely dry. I brought it home, placed it beside a window, and gave it a little water every day. I did not think it would survive. But several weeks later, a small green leaf began to grow. When I saw that new leaf, something inside me felt lighter. A small plant that was almost dead could still grow again as long as it received a little water and a little sunlight each day. Perhaps people are the same. From that day on, I began improving my room little by little. I collected pieces of wood that other people had thrown away and used them to build a small shelf. I saved enough money to buy an old curtain to cover the moldy section of the wall. I even planted a few spring onions in discarded plastic bottles. Every month, I put a small amount of money into a metal box. In some months, it is only 50,000 dong. In others, it is 100,000. I call it money for my future home. I do not know when I will finally be able to leave this 20 square meter room. Perhaps it will take 1 year, perhaps 3 years, perhaps even longer. But for the first time in many years, I have allowed myself to believe that my current life is not the end of my story. I still live alone. At night, there is still no one to ask whether I have eaten. Whenever it rains heavily, I still have to place basins beneath the leaking roof. I still work from early morning until late at night. I still have to calculate every small expense before buying anything. But I no longer believe that I have absolutely no one by my side. I still have myself. I still have two hands strong enough to work. I still have memories of my parents. I still have the small plant growing beside my window. And I have a very simple dream. One day, I will live in a small house where the roof does not leak. It will have a strong door, a clean bed, and a kitchen large enough for me to prepare a proper meal. I will hang my parents' photograph in the most beautiful place. In the evening, I will turn on the light outside the front door. Not because I am waiting for someone to come home, but to remind myself that after spending so many years in darkness, I finally have a place that truly belongs to me. For now, I am still living in this rundown house. I still wake up every morning, fold my old blanket, water the small plant, and prepare to go to work. I do not know whether tomorrow will be easier, but I know that I will keep living. Because sometimes being strong does not mean never crying. Being strong means that after spending an entire night crying until you have no strength left, you still get up the next morning, open the old door, and step outside. My name is Huang. I am 23 years old. I live alone in a rundown 20 square meter house. I have no one by my side, but I still have hope. And as long as I still have hope, I believe that one day my life will change.